Dude, it's good to talk to you because I'm from Cleveland, so it's always cool to talk to a fellow Ohioan. I know you're not here anymore, but
there's 800 of you from Cleveland. There's like 4 of us from Cincinnati that have, have any kind of tangential relationship to the scene.
Right.
So yeah, it seems like every day I meet a new cool person from Cleveland. I got to meet more Cincinnatians.
Yeah, we gotta get those Cincies in there. The nasty natties, baby. I played in Cincinnati. There's a couple of cool spots in that, like a couple smaller venues I've been to that I liked over that area.
Yeah, I mean that's my old stomping grounds. You got Bogarts and the Mad Hatter and Madison Theater. And,
yeah. I think I saw you guys at Peabody's one time in Cleveland.
Oh yeah, Peabody's.
R.I.P.
The spot. I think it's nothing now, right? They knocked the whole thing up, just a parking lot.
They turned it into a parking lot for dorm rooms, I believe. That's what they.
That's so depressing. I mean, admittedly, it was kind of a junky place, but I loved it. That was one of my favorites.
Yeah. And of course, when you're in Cleveland, the one thing you complain about the most is there's no parking. So you can't really be too mad when they put up a parking.
Adding parking, yeah.
So on the current tour, you guys are on this Bleeders tour right now, and you guys are doing blood drives on this tour. Is this just like a clever move by a bunch of secret vampires to get some blood, or what's the idea behind this?
Well, it's actually interesting. I can't take credit for the impetus for it. My manager is an LA native. He grew up in LA, and in the 80s, he went to go see Wasp at the Whiskey, and they had like a similar thing where it was like give blood and get into the show kind of thing. And it was like a one-off thing, but that stayed in his mind for years of wouldn't it be cool to do something like that? And then all the Bleeder stuff came together, and we were talking about the Sweeney Todd of it all. And we circled back to that conversation and thought, well, what if we did it, but took it kind of the next level and got the American Red Cross involved and made it something where, in lieu of having it be a thing where people get blood at the shows, have it be something where if you give blood, you can then come to the gig, show at the merch table what you've done, and you'll get a big, package of merchandise and everything else. And then we can tie it in, because part and parcel to the message of the band has always been, to some capacity, some level of altruism. So we've always wanted to be able to find ways to give back in some way. And I think that this is a really fun way that both plays on the storyline of what we're doing and also is important and needed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we always need more blood. Have you had a chance to donate yourself yet?
Not yet. So we're trying to figure out, we want to do it all together as a band, on one of the tour dates. So we're trying to figure out when we can do that. And, because we're big hams, we've got to have it filmed and the whole thing.
We got to make a spectacle out of it. You can't just do it secretly. Yeah.
Can't just secretly do something positive without making a video.
No one will believe that you actually did it then.
Fair. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never donated blood. I definitely need to do that. I need to make that something I do in my life, because obviously it's important. I have like a weird thing with needles, even though I have like freaking tattoos and stuff. I still like the idea
it's a whole different thing.
Like,
well, I'll give you a funny story. When in the old days, we used to wear like the full body paint, right? And in 2011, I broke my ribs on stage.
Oh, damn.
And they rushed me to the hospital after the gig, because I finished the show, which all busted up bones. But after the show, I get to the hospital and I'm covered in black acrylic paint from my neck down to my hands. And they couldn't find a vein because they couldn't see my veins in my skin. Oh. So it took literally like 10 minutes with people just stabbing around my arms to try to find. So ever since then, I always have this sort of, I've done, I've gotten IVs and stuff since then, but I always think about the time that I was in Cedars-Sinai in LA, and they're stabbing me dozens of times to try to find a vein.
Yeah, that will definitely char the medical experience for you, for sure.
Yeah. So my advice is, if you're somebody who does all the black paint to dress up, don't do that before you go get blood, because it'll make it a more difficult experience. Well, I guess you could do it tonally however you want, but my problem was it was acrylic paint, so it would ball up on our skin. So it would look like there was like kind of a charred texture along my arms. So it took them forever to figure out like what is skin and what is just pieces.
Yeah. So was that the real reason why you guys stopped the whole glam makeup era of Black Veil Brides?
The real truth is, when it comes to the imagery, it's always just been an evolution. And I remember, for me, like my main interest in glam adjacent stuff was primarily, the sort of more horror oriented side of it, whether that was like a Wasp or Lords of the New Church, those kind of things. And obviously I loved early Motley Crue, and nothing against it, but I'm not a big listener to like glam music, like the kind of large scale glam stuff. And at some point early in the band's career, it was always kind of my intention for me to evolve the image from record to record, whatever. And we just sort of got successful early in the career with this kind of giant hair, glammy image. And, we signed to a major label, and then it became like, well, this is what you're going to lean into. So naturally for me, during that first record cycle, I sort of had my, punk rock rebellion where I was like, well, I don't want to do that. So it became less and less where, I'd go out on stage some nights and I have just like a little bit of paint on my neck, or like, you know what I mean? Like I was like half-assing it, so to speak. And
you're
what
trying
I realized
to wean it off a little bit.
Exactly. But I realized if what you're doing from a visual side is not what you want to be doing, then all you're doing is selling falseness to people. And that's why for us, the imagery has always been part and parcel to the music. And so every record cycle, I've always liked to try to figure out what the look is and not have it be the same every single time.
That's great, man. Yeah, I think that would surprise a lot of fans to realize that you're not like a super diehard Motley Crue fan, just because you guys did get so many of those comparisons early on in the career. Like
I love Motley Crue, and I love what they stood for, and not necessarily from a lyrical perspective or an emotional perspective, but from a crazy visual, very aggressive. The Shout of the Devil era in particular is very punk rock in nature. Oh, yeah. But really, for me, my favorite bands are punk bands. It's Alkaline Trio, the Misfits, obviously. And I think fans of me know this, but I would say the people that you're saying would be surprised to find this out would be people who have saw a picture of us in 2010 and then assume that we sound like Motley Crue, which is also the people who every time we release something new are surprised that we don't sound like what they've imagined in their mind for the last 15 years. But that's a whole other conversation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, image is obviously a big thing. And then, of course, like, early on in your career, you guys did have a certain image that may not have represented exactly what you were doing musically. So I'm sure there were a lot of people that are like, wait a minute, what? They sound like this the first time they put you guys on.
I mean, look, and I think sometimes people get confused in that when they maybe don't feel associated with what they're being told that they are, you can have a tendency to push back on that. And I don't want to undersell the importance of Motley Crue. There is no question that I dressed up like Nikki Sixx and called myself Andy Sixx and loved what they were. Right. And, we were lucky enough to tour with them. And without that, the doors aren't open for us in that capacity. So I don't want to undersell the importance. It's only that, for me, that was only part of the things that influenced me. And much more so from a lyrical perspective. I listen to Bruce Springsteen more than I listen to Motley Crue. You know what I'm saying? So it's not a criticism. It's just that for me, as the band has evolved and gone on, it's not surprising to me that we've moved past that imagery, but I think to a certain type of fan that maybe that was the introduction. And by the way, if that's your favorite era of the band, awesome. I know so many bands growing up that I loved who it seems like they hate their fan base. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like they're like, oh, you like our early records? You suck.
You're an idiot. That stuff sucks.
And we all feel weird about our early records, especially for if you're a band like ours, where like our first record was made for like a couple $1,000s in a closet with just like a hope and a dream. So it kind of sounds rough. And the songs are written by teenagers. So,
you're different people. It's hard to even relate. It's probably even hard for you yourself to relate to those songs sometimes, much less for average music listener to grow up away from that,
Yeah, but when we do meet and greets and people say your first record is my favorite record, I'm not going to be like, well, you're wrong.
You should really listen to the new one. Yeah. And we also share, other than Ohio, we share affinity for our love for Alkaline Trio, man. One of my favorite bands of all time. So that's always cool. Yeah, dude. Good Morning was a record. It was one of my gothy emo awakenings, I guess. It was like a change in like my perspective of music, because I was really kind of getting into like the emo scene, and then I heard like Good Morning, I was like, oh, this is like something totally different. Like
it's crazy. That was the record for me too. Was it was in those old days where you would go to FYE and listen to records on the CD, on the sample. Yeah. And I remember it was suggested, because the first band that I found in that sort of world was AFI on the Art of Drowning era, leading up into Sing the Sorrow. And I was hardcore AFI fan. You know, the Despair Faction was their fan club. I was a paid member as a little kid. You know, I had the Despair Faction card, and I wore the shirt every day. And I remember Alkaline Trio, when Good Morning came out, was suggested as like for fans of AFI. And I listened to it, and it was one of those like transformative experiences where the first minute of This Could Be Love, I just was like, oh, this is everything to me. Like this, it changed my whole life. And to this day, there's really nothing that means more to me than that band. And everything that they ever release, I'm day one pre-order, buy the, you know, the vinyl and the CD and the t-shirt and whatever. Like, I'm an obsessive fan, and I've been lucky enough to get to work with Matt, and yeah, they're just my absolute favorite.
That's so cool, man. Yeah, that's so great to be able to, you know, have those kind of dreams to come to fruition like that. Like you said, like actually get to meet your idols, and your idols not be dickheads. They actually be cool.
It's not always the case, man. We don't got to get in the weeds, but there's plenty of examples where that isn't the case.
Aside from this Bleeders tour, you guys just announced another massive tour with Falling in Reverse and then Tech Nine and Dance Gavin Dance. A lot of fans were like, I guess there's probably like newer fans were surprised to see that you were touring with Falling in Reverse, but you and Ronnie Radke actually go way back, right?
Yeah, I've known Ronnie. I met him when I was 16. It was 2007, and my friends at the time wanted to go see Bullet for My Valentine, and it was actually at Bogart's, and I tagged along, and Escape the Fate was opening for Bullet on that tour, and I'd never heard of Escape the Fate. We caught a little bit of their set, and then I'm pretty bad socially. Like, I'm kind of whatever the opposite of a social butterfly is. I'm sort of the not the wallflower, because wallflower indicates that you go somewhere and stand at the wall. I just don't go anywhere. So if I'm ever out,
a
even
recluse,
at that age, yeah, I didn't know what to do. So I remember hanging back in Bogart's. There's like the back bar area where the merch is, and I was just hanging around back there. You know, weird kid, didn't know what to do, didn't know anybody to talk to, and Ronnie like stormed back there, and you know, in a very Ronnie way, was sort of very charismatic and talking to everybody, and he started shouting at me like, "Hey, are you Nikki Sixx?" Like, kind of in a teasing way, right? And he goes, "I'm Nikki Sixx too." And then we started talking about, ironically, Motley Crue and, you know, the visual side of rock and everything, and we really hit it off. And there's actually a photo of us from that night that floats around all the time, because he was like, "Oh, somebody got to take a picture with us, the two Nikki Sixxes." And so there's a picture of us from the gig that I've seen for years and years. And since then, you know, we stayed in touch over the years. And then around the time that I was 22, 23, we toured together. And, you know, we've always just had weird circumstantial things like, you know, we were rehearsing at a place, and next door he was working on his mixtape. So I walk out to smoke a cigarette, and, you know, he's next door, and next thing I know, we're doing that Asshole song. Or, you know...
so that came together like completely by random?
Well, he had hit me up, and then you know, it's one of those things where, again, I'm sort of a little bit of a phantom when it comes to socializing. Like, you know, admittedly, I'm not very approachable. And it's not because I think I'm better than anybody. I just don't I forget that I'm supposed to talk to people. Yeah. So I'm what you might call a bad friend. Not in the way that I'm a bad friend. Like, I'm there for the people I love. It's just that I forget about being a friend to people. But
maybe you just disassociate or something. Maybe that's what it is.
I'm just so busy like buying action figures and drawing and making costumes and sitting in my room. The only person in the whole world that I love, or that I remember to talk to every day is my wife, because, you know, like, that's my number one. Yeah. But if you fall under that category, it's very hard for me to remember to talk to people. But again, that's my fault. But so we were, and then like similarly, we were living in downtown LA at the time, and I was driving to our loft that we lived in at the time, and I see this music video being shot, and there's all these lights and everything everywhere, and it was nearby. And I thought I saw Ronnie, and I hit him up and I go, "Yo, are you shooting a video downtown right now?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I go, "You're literally like right across the street from where I live." He's like, "Oh, wow. Come be in the video." So then I'm in the Bad Girls Club video, I was literally just wearing the clothes that I was wearing driving home, just walked up, didn't know the song. So people ask me all the time, like, why are you in the Bad Girls Club video? And there is no answer other than I lived where they were filming it. And
I was
I just
there.
came down. Yeah. So I've known Ronnie for years and years, and we've always had a good relationship. And obviously he is exceedingly successful and deservedly so when it comes to, I've always said, whether he likes the comparison or not, I've always looked at him sort of as like a David Lee Roth of our era, where
oh yeah, that's accurate.
he is extraordinarily entertaining and says stuff to try to get people's attention and tries to mess with people, and is very funny and charismatic. But also, like if you watch David Lee Roth in an interview, people will be like, I can't believe he said that. And I think in a lot of ways, that's sort of the way that Ronnie is pretty often.
I like that. Yeah, he is definitely the new age David Lee Roth. That's great. So also, congrats, shifting gears here, on the new song Bleeders, this new EP coming out as well called Bleeders. And of course, this whole thing ties in with the Sweeney Todd. Now, were you just like a really big fan of the Johnny Depp movie, or it goes a little deeper than that, right?
No, my introduction to musical theater as a kid. So my dad was into musical theater. He went to CCM, which is the College Conservatory of Music, and he was a musical theater major. And he was in shows before I was born. So he had all of these records and stuff of different shows that he both liked and things that he was in. And there was like a local production that happened in Cincinnati of Sweeney Todd in like the early 90s that my parents went to just on like a date night kind of thing. And I guess, because I can't, when you're that young, you don't know how something enters into your thought process. It's just there. I remember the original cast recording from the late 70s being around in the house, and as a real little kid listening to it and being terrified of it, and but also loving it. And then it just became an obsession of mine. So that it's been a part of my life since I was really little. And I remember the Johnny Depp movie, me being like that sort of like annoying teenager gatekeeper type. When the movie came out, I was pissed that they were making a movie of it. Yeah. And I was like, now everybody's going to know about my thing. And I loved the movie. I saw it like 3 or 4 times opening week. And nice. Yes, I have 2 Sweeney Todd tattoos, and they are, representative of something. To me, I put it on the same level as the Misfits or something else in terms of like important stuff to me.
So for me, whenever I think of Sweeney Todd, the only thing that comes to mind is that Office episode. Have you seen that episode?
Well, that's the other thing, is that I absolutely love The Office, and I'm one of those people. I think I lost count, but I've watched it in total somewhere in the 500 to 600s in terms of watching the whole show all the way through.
Yeah, it's easy to do.
Well, because I'm sort of nuts, so like I need to have the same stimulus to keep me calm all the time.
Yeah,
so
feel good content.
I don't even watch it. I just keep it on in the background anytime we're on tour, over and over and over again. So, but the funny thing was, I remember when that episode aired, feeling like that weird sort of Truman Show moment where I was like, this is so weird that this is being made specific. Like 2 of my favorite things. Yeah. Well, I always, the band Creeper that's on this tour with us right now, I joke with Will that they're a band that when I listen to their records, I have to remind myself that I'm not the only person in the world, because when I listen to it, I go, there's no way that this wasn't made specifically for me. That's how much I love it.
Wow.
And similarly, when that Office episode came out, I was like, this is two things I love that are way too specific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, now at least I'll have your new record to it'll be another Sweeney Todd reference for me in my old mind bank.
Yeah, the next one is going to be The Office. That'll be the next.
Dude, yes. Black Veil Bride's Office record. Theme.
Yeah.
You guys change when you guys come on stage wearing like the ties and everything. Have somebody wear the Dwight glasses. Yeah. Dude, I don't know who's going to be Pam.
We'll leave that to another band. We've got more musical theater villains to get through.
Yeah, you got to get through those first. With the announcement, you guys also dropped this mini documentary about the EP, and it was kind of like a overview of the band's career. Really, it was a pretty in-depth piece. It's really awesome, really well put together. You just kind of opened it up talking about how the band got a lot of hate early on in the days, like early in the beginning. Like, what do you think was the reason why Black Veil Brides got so much hate early on?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think one thing I've always pointed to is in the early days, especially, there was a lot of kind of, whether people were aware of it or not, sort of an inherent misogyny within the music industry, particularly rock and metal, because we had a primarily female audience when we started, particularly young females, I'm talking beyond fan bases, record labels would say to me, it's all well and good, but we got to make sure that we get you more male fans on the next record. Like that was the thing that would suddenly make us more valid. And I think that that's changed over the years. You know, that's not really a thing. And obviously our audience has grown and is much more inclusive of kind of everybody at this point. But in the early days, you know, I was a young teenage boy who, you know, sort of related pretty heavily to young people. And I think that the young audience, whether it was regardless of gender, there was something that was sort of seen as invalid about that. And I think that that sort of painted us in a certain way for people where they, you know, it's been 20 years almost since I started the band. I started the band in 2006. And there's really never been a day that goes by that we don't hear, oh, I didn't realize that you're good, or, you know, because it just
kind of uppercut compliment.
Yeah. Well, you know, and it's a funny thing. Some bands, it's sort of funny when some bands end up in a position where people are suddenly angry at them or talking shit about them or whatever else. They don't really know how to handle it because they've never been told that they suck, or like they're just, you know, there's a lot of bands that when they come out, everybody's like, good job. Everything you do is awesome. And for us, I've never known a day where people weren't just dumping on everything that we do all the time. So like, it doesn't really faze me at this point where, I mean, we have in our own meet and greets, people come up and be like, hey, I get bullied for listening to you. Like that's said to me in person. In 2024. Wow. So if that's your basis, like it's very hard to sort of hurt my feelings at this point. But, and so I guess to answer your question directly, I don't know why that's the case, but it doesn't really, if anything, it's just pushed me my whole career. Yeah. And as a young person, that manifested in me screaming at people at award shows. And as an adult, it manifested in me just wanting to do more and more cool stuff with the opportunity that I'm given. Yeah.
Well, you've grown a lot since then and since those days. Is there any band or media outlet that's still kind of on your shit list in the back of your mind when you think about them? You're like, man, F those guys.
I have an axe to grind with nearly everybody. So like, I'm really
I hope I don't make that list.
I'm really good at cataloging information and then remembering the one thing about this outlet or person that has wronged me in some way and holding on to it forever. So that it's maybe not my best trait, but I'm really like, you might not even know it. But if you've ever done anything that I perceived as a slight, I never forget it and I hold on to it forever.
Oh man. All right, let's start naming names. Come on, let's get into it.
It would be too long, really. The list of people that I don't feel have done me wrong in some way would be much shorter.
So dude, you're a wrestling fan, right?
Well, certainly on an overall fan. I'm not current in terms of, you know, WWE and AEW. I do watch on occasion, but I can't talk specific storylines. When Sting came back to AEW, that was a big deal for me because Sting is one of my like childhood heroes. But in total, I love WWE. I love wrestling and have since I was a kid.
Same, huge wrestling nerd. Actually, dude, SummerSlam's coming to Cleveland. I don't know if you're going to be around for that, but yeah.
I will not be around, but I hope that you get to go.
Oh yeah, dude, I bought tickets, and then I felt immediately nauseous because of how much they cost to get those tickets.
I imagine,
once in a lifetime. What do you think is the best wrestling entrance song or just entrance in general? If you had to pick one.
Well, I got to go back. I mean, I used it as my intro for my solo tours back in like 2017 and 2018 is the original Crow era Sting entrance music.
Oh, very cool.
With the little kids talking and all that stuff and the lightning and all of that. I know some people are like his later entrance music more. But that to me, like it's one of my favorite songs. Like that entrance music puts me in a good mood.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Did anyone catch it on tour? Like any wrestling fans come up to you
Absolutely after? Zero people knew what was happening.
Oh man. That's gotta be a little bit of a letdown, right? Like you're like, I really want somebody to catch this.
I think, well, maybe somebody did. They just didn't tell me. But nobody on the tour did. I was disappointed that no one on the tour was like, hey, that's Sting.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. I got a few like little fan questions. I put a poll up on my Instagram story to see if anyone had any questions for you. So if you have a few minutes, get in a few of those. So it's a big hot topic right now. How do you feel about cell phones at shows? People recording shows on their phones.
I could really give a shit. Let people do what they want to do. I think that people who have gotten everything that they ever want in the whole world should consider complaining less about how people take in their art. Is it my favorite thing that someone watches me from behind a screen? Maybe not, but who gives a shit? If you're lucky enough, there's a Paul Stanley quote that always will stick with me, which is, if you're lucky enough to become the president, be elected president, and then you complain about wearing a tie, you're kind of a little nuts. So if you get what you want in your life, going through and nitpicking about the way in which someone experiences the things that you've been so lucky as to get feels like a little bit of a little too much to bitch about. But look, I don't know. I can't speak specifically about anybody who has complained about it. I just know it's a big issue for a lot of people. For me, it isn't. If you want to come watch through a phone or watch through a Viewmaster or put goggles on or whatever you want to do, just come to the show and enjoy it however you want to.
Just be there. That's what's most important.
Yeah.
Do you have a side on the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef?
No, I don't. I don't, and I don't give a shit, really. And that's not. I don't care at all.
Yeah, it's so confusing. Like, so I've had people ask me, because I'm in the music business. People think like, "Oh, you probably know. Can you explain it to me?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't understand it either."
I do know that of the two of them, I appreciate Kendrick's music more. I think as a lyricist, it to me it's a more interesting listen. But I don't care.
Yeah, not taking sides in the beef. Do you have any music hot takes? Any hill that you would die on?
I think that the complaint about metalcore all sounding the same has actually created a secondary genre of pretend metalcore that doesn't exist, which is people mocking metalcore that all sounds the same. So, like that meme that's going around about all these people talking about how every metalcore band sounds the same. I think actually every meme about a metalcore song sounds the same, which has now created its own subgenre of pretend metalcore that's about making fun of metalcore.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's dude. That reminds me of the whole Octane Core thing. Obviously, Octane Core became like a subgenre of like the music that is like predominantly played on Sirius XM Octane, and then Nick Nocturnal makes an Octane Core song, and then we put it in rotation. We start playing an Octane, and it becomes like the meme like comes alive and becomes self-aware almost. And like now that's a whole self.
I think sometimes people just get bored and they want to figure out ways in which good songs are not good. And I think objectively, if you're getting regular play on the radio, it's because you've written a good song. So, we have nothing going on with ourselves when we spend all of this time bitching about the dumbest things in the world on the internet.
Yeah, I just don't understand why people complain and give shit to somebody for enjoying something or making something that they like. Why is it taking what's it taking away from you?
An incendiary comment is a social cry. So if you say something that is mean or angry or criticizes somebody else on an open platform, you are inviting another person to look at your thing and go, yeah, I also hate that thing, think that thing, whatever. And then you've created a friendship that's predicated on how you both hate this thing. And it is by far and away the worst part of society, that now we have this need to have angry friendships that are based upon things we both hate. Sort of weird.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because like, if you make a shitty comment and then let's say 100 people like your comment, you feel like, oh, I am onto something here. I'm brilliant. But like in the grand scheme of things, 100 people in the whole world is nothing.
But also if a million trillion people like it, all you've still done is shit on someone else's thing. Like you haven't made a thing. You've just a lot of people also said, yes, we don't like this thing. That's not an accomplishment for you.
Yeah, you're farming negativity. Like you're not actually producing anything to counterpoint that. Like what, if you don't like this, check this out. But you're just like, no, thumbs down.
I just think that it puts musicians and entertainers in a position where you're living in constant fear of doing something that is going to be disliked by your audience, a song that they don't like, an outfit choice or whatever thing. So it breeds this sort of sameness across the board. And that's what people talk about. That's what they mean to say when they say that music sounds the same.
Yeah.
It's actually that the sort of monoculture that's created by fear of doing anything that could be perceived as dumb or bad means that no one takes a chance. And without chances, you don't have good or interesting art. If David Bowie goes from Ziggy Stardust to Thin White Duke in this current era, he would get a bunch of comments about, I miss when you used to wear the star. This is sad. I hate this now. And we would never have had all of the various David Bowie eras because he would be protecting himself. Or I'm not saying David Bowie would do this, but the modern impulse of an artist is to protect yourself from your audience.
That's a good point, man. I wonder how many like legendary artists we wouldn't have, or at least we wouldn't have the view of them we do now if social media existed when they were on their come-ups. You know, like, how many bands would have been afraid to take risks?
There's good stuff about being able to connect with your audience, and then there's other parts that, like, if when I was 12, I could have told Davey Havoc the dumb things I thought about their change in record styles.
Yeah.
Like, that wouldn't have been good. Like, Davey didn't need to hear from me when I was 12 about why I think that Crash Love wasn't the right move.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, because, by the way, as an adult, I love that record. And now I understand their evolutionary path.
That's the thing. Like, that's something to take into consideration, too. Like, you're getting shit on online by a 12-year-old, and then 10 years later, that person's going to turn around and be like, you know what? That record was pretty good. It's like, yeah, well, thanks now. 10 years ago, you really fucking ruined things for me by starting an army against me.
Well, that's my whole life. So...
Well, dude, Eddie, I know you got to run. It's been so good talking, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat. Do you have any more last minute plugs before we get out of here?
We're on the Bleeders tour, and then we're on the popular Mons tour, World Domination, in the fall, and then more stuff after that. So go check out Bleeders, and we'll see you guys on the road.